Tonight on Mississippi Insight, the return to school. The governor orders the start of class pushed back in several counties. Jackson Public Schools is already going online only. We talked to the superintendent about that decision. Also, a statewide mask mandate now in effect in Mississippi. And in a year without the Neshoba County Fair, one online site is looking to give candidates and state leaders a chance to get on the stump. Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. First tonight, Governor Tate Reeves ordering schools to hold off going back in 8 counties, including Hinds and Forest County. He also ordered a statewide mask mandate, all aimed at bringing down the number of cases before the start of school.
We have to balance the very real risk of the virus and the lifelong damage of school closures. To do that, we have to safely provide education for the greatest possible number of children. In my opinion, the best way to accomplish that is to provide guidelines, allow local school leaders to tailor them, and step in with the authority of state government if and when and where it is absolutely necessary.
The return to school is just a few weeks away. Some districts are planning an in-person return. Others are going hybrid and some are virtual only. That includes Jackson Public Schools, which will be fully virtual by the fall semester. Joining us now is Dr. Errick Greene, JPS Superintendent. And Dr. Greene, thank you again for joining us.
Sure. Happy to be with you.
Walk us through the factors that you considered when you decided to go virtual only for the first semester.
Well, I think as most people know, we originally launched a plan that provided for a variety of options, a traditional, hybrid, and a virtual model for families to tap into. As we launched that plan and as we continued over the next week to watch the data in the state of Mississippi and Hinds County around COVID cases and the increase, the surge really in cases, deaths, as well as the impact to our hospitals and health facilities, it just became increasingly clear to us that we just couldn't keep to that original plan. And so that's really what drove us to shift the plan to virtual only for this first semester. And that includes as well the increased cases, pediatric cases of COVID that we're seeing in the state and around the country.
You know, the governor has really been pushing for kids to get back into the classroom. Do you feel any pressure to shorten that and getting kids back into the classroom instead of going virtual for the entire semester?
Well, we felt pressure from the very beginning, back in March, to as quickly as possible get our young people back in classrooms and try to resume some bit of normalcy. The reality is our situation doesn't allow for that. So the answer is yes. I do feel the pressure. I feel it from the governor and from our parents and from teachers and from our scholars. I think the business community, everyone would like to see the day when our scholars are and when our teachers and staff are able to be back in the classroom and to have them learning in that way. Unfortunately, that's not our current situation. And so we have to be led by the data. We have to be led by the guidance that we're receiving from health officials. And I will tell you that guidance, as I'm sure others have seen, it shifts over time. It's not always consistent. And so, we've been left to try to do our very best with what we're seeing and what we know to be true about what children need.
What kind of backlash have you received with your decision to go virtual?
I wouldn't say any backlash. So certainly there are those who, and we named this from the beginning, there are those families that are not situated well to support a virtual model. But we knew that from the beginning, which is why we created a plan that included the traditional and the hybrid models. Fortunately, again, because of the data, because of what we're seeing with health concerns and the spread, we simply couldn't maintain that. But sure, we've heard from the governor and he, just like others of us, we believe that children need to be in school. That does not negate the health risks. And that's why we're now seeing all over the country where folks who were determined to move our young people back into school, they're having some challenges. And I'm certainly not backseat driving in those districts. We've all have been left out here to make these really tough decisions between very difficult options. There's no one right answer, not at all. So again, I wouldn't call it backlash, but folks are continuing to share their varying opinions, differing opinions about how we should move forward. In the end, I've got to be able to sleep at night. And I need to know that decisions I've made, that I'm confident that these are the ones that are going to maintain the greatest safety as possible.
The Corinth School District, when they're in their second week now, they've had several cases of COVID, and there are dozens of students who are quarantined. What do you take from what they're experiencing, but a much smaller school district right now?
Yeah, again, I'll say I'm in no way backseat driving or Monday morning quarterbacking the decisions that other leaders have made. I suspect that they, just as we're doing here, are looking at their context and the data in their area and the needs of their families and constituents, and making decisions based on that. That's exactly what we're doing. And based on the numbers here and the situations that we've already experienced, we had some of our athletes who were just conditioning. They weren't even playing the actual sports, but conditioning over the summer, who were tested positive. And obviously you're bringing that to the schoolhouse. It doesn't just show up in the schoolhouse or on the field by itself. But we're learning from that. We've had cases here in central office, not many, but we've had cases here in central office where individuals came in contact with someone from home, and so we had to do some quarantining and testing and that sort of thing. It's insidious. It's a challenge to try to manage it and maintain safety, and yet that's exactly what we're called to do.
How do you reach those students who don't have good internet service or no internet service at all at home to be virtual? We, Jackson Public Schools, we were not one-to-one, so we didn't have one device per scholar, but we are absolutely moving to a one-to-one model. I'm excited about that. And all goes as planned. We will be one-to-one by the end of the fall, and certainly by the end of this first semester. We have a number of devices in our inventory already, and so we will be moving those devices out to scholars and families. Obviously, we want to first equip those families without a device in the home so that their scholars can get online and work with us. And we also have a limited number, but a number of hotspots that we'll be able to get out to families as well. So we have some resources that we'll be moving out to our scholars and families to help them to get online. And more of them will be coming as we get into the fall. Like other districts, we're waiting on shipments to come in with devices and that. And in the meantime, if there happen to be those who can't readily get online, we've got partnerships that we've been building out with Boys and Girls Club, with Operation Shoestring, with our faith-based community, other nonprofit organizations. It's not perfect, but there are lots of opportunities for our scholars to remain engaged and for us to ensure that they move forward in their learning. The stakes are high for our scholars. You really do have to show up. You have to do your very best. You have to demonstrate that you are learning. You have to be present, right? Attendance will be taken, so you can't just decide not to log in and not to do the work that's being assigned. There will be supports for our scholars, but it will be graded, and not everyone will pass if you don't demonstrate that you're ready to move forward. And so I want to be very clear with our scholars and with our teachers that we're moving forward in school and with the same, many of the same requirements for demonstrations of learning. Much more with Dr. Errick Greene when we come back, including what will happen with sports this school year. We're back with Jackson Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Errick Greene as JPS is planning a fully virtual fall semester. You talked about sports and the cases. What is going to happen with sports? Because I know there was some confusion, I guess, several weeks ago about whether you were having sports or not. Some players were already talking about transferring out of the schools because they wanted to play their senior year. What's going to happen with sports in the district?
Yeah, let me clarify. So a quote unquote decision was reported on one of our news outlets when a decision had not been made. And then our team, unfortunately, took that for truth, and then it spiraled. We had not made a decision, had not communicated a decision, but unfortunately, members of our team took that as the truth and carried it forth. No, we have not made a final decision regarding athletics and some of the extracurriculars. I will tell you, since we have made a decision to go virtual in terms of daily instruction and schooling, it is not likely that we'll be able to run the athletics and extracurricular programs in the way that we typically do. We are still looking, though, and planning for some pieces that we can offer to young people to honor the fact that many of them have been practicing and honing their skills and talents over the years, and some of them are preparing to go on to college, and they need to have an opportunity to vie for scholarships and seats or positions on those teams. And we're mindful of that. At the end of the day, obviously I can't make a decision about athletics that is solely based on, opposition from those who would be unfortunately impacted if we were to move away from it. That's just not how decisions are made. They can't be made in that way. So I acknowledge that there are those who would be inconvenienced with this. We will absolutely make decisions based on the safety of our players, of our coaches, of families and communities. And so, we expect, though, that we will make a final decision as quickly as possible. As you have seen, I'm sure in the news, athletic divisions and entities all over the country are shifting. The national athletics associations, we've seen college associations, Ivy Leagues, others have shifted. And so it's not just a high school football or high school athletics or extracurricular issue. We're seeing others making shifts, and we'll likely make some shifts as well.
Dr. Greene, we got an email from a teacher talking about the concern about their children and their parents first, and they can't bring their kids to school, to their job, but they also have to teach virtually. What is the situation there? And there are hundreds of teachers that are in this predicament. What's going on as far as teachers who are parents and will have to be in the situation where they'll have to teach their own kids, but also have to come to work?
Yeah. Great question. And we obviously have been in talks with several of our parents who fall into that situation or have other situations that make it difficult for them to work in person in schools or what have you. So a few things on that. One, all over the country, all throughout our communities, there are those who are considered on the front lines, our first responders of sorts, essential workers. And so we have got to be mindful of what we're paid to do. We have to be mindful of that. Obviously, we're making major shifts to try and keep all of us safe, not the least of which is moving to a virtual model. We're also required to provide our scholars with an education that is going to move them forward, is going to support them in their continued learning. That's what we're paid to do. That's what pays my bills. That's what pays our teachers' bills and our principals and everybody else. That's what pays our bills. That work that we do, that service that we provide to the community. At the same time, we recognize that we do have staff members, not just teachers, staff members in general, who have their own health concerns, perhaps have family members with specific underlying health concerns or other issues, and as well as childcare. We have instituted a process for our staff members, again, not just our teachers, our staff members, to signal to us that they have those kinds of concerns and those really difficult situations that would make it difficult for them to do their jobs in the way that the jobs have been done in the past. And in some cases, we're able to make some shifts and allow people to work from home remotely or on a different schedule and that sort of thing. In some cases, we are not. And we simply have to be honest about that and then look at the options that exist, whether it's leave, family medical leave, sick leave, any of that sort of thing. And so we're working with team members to first understand what those needs are and what the options are for them to do the good work that they still want to do, but also for us to exist and to operate and to provide the service that we were created to provide.
What would need to change to prevent this from being a year-long situation of virtual learning? What would you have to see to get kids back into the classroom?
Again, so mid-July, we rolled out 3 options, 3 different models that we were prepared to run. And that was with COVID still in the community. And so I believe we'd be prepared to move into a more flexible model if we see a decreased level of spread in the community. If we get to a place where our hospitals are not at capacity, when we see that more and more of our scholars and families and others in the community are following those same precautions that we've been talking about for 4 or 5 months, about hand washing and wearing a mask and all those sorts of things. So as we see the numbers come down, I think more and more people will be comfortable with, this is something that we're behaving differently, and so we're managing the potential spread. And so now we're more comfortable with bringing scholars, or some scholars at least, back into the building and distancing them and being able to operate in that way.
Dr. Errick Greene, Superintendent, Jackson Public Schools, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions and just for helping us to get the message out as to where we are and where we're headed.
Coming up, an online alternative to the stump speeches at the Neshoba County Fair. Amid the pandemic, a key event on Mississippi's political calendar is off this year. The end of July would have featured the Neshoba County Fair and its 2 days of stump speeches. The people at y'allpolitics.com are now trying to offer an alternative. And Frank Corder with Y'all Politics joins us now via Zoom to tell us all about it. Frank, talk to us about On the Stump. What's this all about?
We are putting on a virtual event where candidates and elected officials across the state can kind of get on their stump and fill the void where this pandemic has left in the voters' minds, where they can hear from their public officials, they can hear from their candidates. One of the great traditions around Mississippi is going to your county fair and hearing your local officials speak and knowing what their platform is. We've kind of missed that this year, so this On the Stump event kind of helps fill that void. So this will be on y'allpolitics.com, but also on our Facebook and our YouTube platforms, and it'll run for about 2.5 hours.
Well, how much of a difference do you think having this, not having the fair, will make on the political races come this fall?
That's one of the things that's important to us, was trying to find a way to connect Mississippians with these officials and these candidates. It's a very big election cycle this year, and not having those events where you can hear from our candidates can definitely affect the selection. So one of the reasons why we did this event was to make sure Mississippians could find a way to hear from their candidates and know what's going on, know what those platform issues are, and kind of get them in front of their voters.
Running a race during this pandemic has been, I guess, very difficult and somewhat creative for a lot of candidates. How do you think many candidates are handling their elections during this time? are their campaigns?
You know, one of the things that you'll see is in this technological age, you're seeing candidates have to convert from a retail politics on the side of the street and walking, knocking on doors, and going to have face-to-face contacts. You're seeing candidates have to go virtual, and so you're seeing lots of social media platform use, lots of videos, lots of ads, and they're trying their best to get their message out. But it's definitely a challenge during this pandemic.
Frank Corder, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, and we'll be right back. A reminder, join us this coming Thursday night as 12 News presents a Mississippi Town Hall, a conversation about race. I'll be talking with a diverse panel about the issues facing all of us right now. That's Thursday night at 7 p.m. Thanks to Dr. Errick Greene and UL Politics Managing Editor Frank Corder for joining us. We'll be back next Saturday night with another edition of Mississippi Insight. Until then, make it a good night.